guys, welcome back to the TRP. In today's episode, we have got a returning guest. Diesel's left the set. Roni, welcome back.
Hi,
Welcome
thanks
back,
for
Ron.
having me.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Yeah, good.
Really good. How does it feel to be back on the TRP?
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, so I'm glad.
Your first episode flunked, but we thought we'd give you another chance. It is nice to see you back, but...
Killed us with the views, you know.
Yeah.
Nah, she was awesome. First episode was class.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
But yeah, we are discussing quite a difficult topic today.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what we're talking about, guys, is the current issues going on in America through the case of Roe and Wade. So what we've done is we've come up with a few questions and we're going to kind of look at the problem and just give our perspectives on it. So the first question is, should men really be on the panel of justices, especially as the majority at 66%? So, guys, what do you think?
I don't think they should really, because it's something that doesn't affect us as being male. It's controversial. What are you doing?
Yeah, drink.
No, I don't think they should, because it's something that we'll never experience in our lifetime. Like it just can't happen. And why should we be in control of something that doesn't affect us? What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one because to make up the Supreme Court, you have to have, diversity. You have to have men and women and people of all different backgrounds and races and religions and cultures and whatnot. So it's hard to say that this should be a completely female decision, but then it's a decision that only affects the female bodies. So it is an uncomfortable concept that men are the ones making the decisions. As you said, the majority as well.
Well, yeah, like I said, 66% of that panel were men. And I just think for me, like I'm living in a bit of a dream world, but I kind of think that decision should solely be made by women. I really do. I
agree, man.
I can't get my head around why something that men ultimately, everything that goes around having an abortion is just things that men can never ever truly relate to. So why is 66% of that panel men? It's just, to me, it is crazy.
Yeah, but then you have to consider that, there were females who were part of overturning Roe v. Wade and making abortion or stopping it from being a constitutional right. So it's not that, maybe men are giving the wrong opinions or...
But shouldn't it be more...
Only 1/3 of them are women.
It should be more equal, surely.
Surely it should be at least... Well, it's impossible to have a 50-50 split.
You have to have diversity.
People, but
66, I mean, that's a high percentage, isn't it? It doesn't sit well, really.
We were obviously talking earlier about we're part of the UK legal system, so we roughly have a good idea of how it works. But America is very different, and it's their Supreme Court, the way it's made up. It's very political, and Supreme Court justices are appointed for hopefully more than, but it seems like their political beliefs and whether or not they're conservative or liberal. And as we know that Trump got the opportunity, which was very rare, to put 3 Supreme Court justices in post, all of which being very conservative people, have now tipped the balance of the Supreme Court. So you can almost guess the outcome of a case based on who the majority is in terms of what their, I guess, political affiliations are rather than their gender or their backgrounds, perhaps. So it's I think this is an America problem.
For sure it's an America problem, but I think, when we dig into this podcast episode, it is more, from my perspective, is more than an America problem. I granted this specific issue is only really affecting Americans, but I will explain as we go further. But I just think when you look at it, I do get what you're saying, but I just think that the overwhelming principle that should be important in a case like this is gender, because this decision does not affect men. It doesn't affect men.
It makes no sense for us to have the power to dictate something
about a woman's body
that we cannot experience ourselves.
Yeah.
That doesn't sit well with
And like
really.
you can get as legal and as technical as you like, but when you've done it right down to what it is, that I just don't. I think that there is some that their legal system specifically is broken in that sense. It really is, and I can understand the uproar that women feel. You know, I saw Michelle Obama coming out today and just saying how she's just like feels, you know, so incredibly upset for the future for women in America in the future. Just
Yeah,
it's
the
a
ripple
really
impact.
scary time for them, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it. You know, again, we spoke about it earlier, but there are no laws that govern a man's body. So this is very
Exactly.
niche in that you are talking about someone's bodily autonomy, but specifically a female gender. So yeah, it's quite unprecedented in terms of you can't really compare it to much else because you guys don't have the same. Not you guys because you're British, but you don't have the same, I guess, restrictions on your body and people telling you what you can and can't do with your own body and your choices. So it is a very scary concept, scary time. And you'd think as well in 2022 that we're sort of moving forward and we're progressing, but a lot of people have said this is, you know, we're going back to the 1950s. We're taking a huge step back where America is
It
stuck in
certainly
the
looks
past.
that way, yeah.
And to be fair, if Boris Johnson's slating you, you've got to be doing something wrong. You've got to be doing something
Very,
wrong.
very
Do you
good
know what I
point,
mean?
man. Yeah.
Obviously, that would be a dream world that decision was purely made by women. It would be impossible. But I just think it was something that when I first looked at the case, that really stood out for me. That the majority of the people making that decision were men.
Yeah, I agree. It's a strange thing. I don't know what the right decision is. Do you wipe out the males of the Supreme Court and you say this is just females who can decide on this? Is that what you're suggesting?
If it was my decision, yeah, it would be that I think that if it's a decision that solely affects women, I mean, the fundamental principle is only. I mean, granted, the after effect of an abortion will affect the potential father. Of course, it will. But the actual physical act of an abortion directly affects the woman.
Yeah.
A man can't have an abortion.
So then I guess, you know, looking at it in a wider sense and for what it is, this wasn't necessarily about abortion. I know that sounds really strange, but we're talking about America's constitution and their laws and the way it's structured. And if you are to read the law, you went to law school, I went to law school, law is free from emotion, right? So it's not an emotional decision. It's not thinking about how a woman would feel or should I make this decision. It's you are there to read the law, and the written Constitution of America doesn't expressly say that women have the right to an abortion. It's something that's been interpreted by the courts, you know, in Roe v. Wade.
But the Supreme Court is there to protect the people's civil liberties, right? So
their constitutional rights.
Yeah, and I get that, and I get what you're saying, of course. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think that this situation is not protecting women's civil liberties in any way, shape, or form. And however you thread it, however you sell it, it's just not.
Yeah, it's a bad day for people, right? It's a bad day for America.
For
and
sure.
I think overnight, out of the 50 states, I think just shy of half of them put their trigger laws in place and completely made abortion illegal and punishable and, you know, a crime, which is then you're in the difficult thing of your geography dictates your rights. Your bodily autonomy is based on your geography, which is not good.
Yeah, it's a very sad time. But I suppose you're right. The reality is that you're never going to be in a situation where 9 women would make that decision. So sadly, that is just how it is. Moving on to the next question. So are the people who support this change looking at this issue too simplistically?
I think they are, yeah. Because there's all this pro-life movement going on and they're out there and they're chanting that people are murdering babies, which we know is untrue because it's not a fetus. It hasn't had that length of time. But that seems to be the focal point. You guys are murdering babies. This is against our belief. This could be deriving from other factors like religion. But the whole thing is almost farcical because, yes, you can say I'm pro-life, but are you pro-life in just this narrative or are you pro-life in everything? Because they're not in everything, are they? Because it conflicts with the gun laws, it conflicts with immigration. There's so many factors to this. There's so many layers that if you're pro-life, then surely you have to be pro-life in everything.
Yeah.
It can't be to suit your narrative, which is what it appears on the surface to be.
Yeah.
But they're not thinking about the different, well, there's loads of variations of why people have got pregnant and why they might want an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really not considering all of those factors, are they?
So when you say simplifying it, do you mean like the phrase "you're murdering babies"? Is that like the bones of it?
They're simplifying a complex problem, right? To, from what I've seen on the news when they're chanting, it's kind of the narrative is you guys are just getting pregnant, you're doing what you want, and now because it's inconvenient for you, you want to get rid of the potential baby, right? That's why they're so pumped up and they're angry and they're out there and they're chanting and they got this tribal mentality, when actually there's so many scenarios of why you could be pregnant. And you said a few earlier, didn't you, about, you know, if there's like a young child that's been abused, got pregnant, is it fair to bring that child into the world?
Yeah.
Rape cases, there's loads of reasons why someone might get pregnant. There could be something wrong with the fetus. It could be a birth defect that might jeopardize the mother's life. If you're in a state where it's now illegal to go and have that abortion, is your life now on the line? They're not thinking about these things.
Yeah. And I think when you say, you know, the simplification of it, then the automatic counter argument is you say, well, what about incest and rape? And a lot of like the sort of TV are covering, you know, the media is covering that, and certain states will say it is legal in these cases or it's not. And unfortunately, there's a lot of states that are saying those aren't exceptions for us, because when a fetus is created, that's the life, and we protect it as though it was, you know, a baby existing independently. So you can see the gateway for abuse there, that people who have already gone through very traumatic things are having to continue that, you know, and live with that for the rest of their lives, because, you know, kids don't stop needing you when they turn 10 or 18 or even like 25 or 30. It's a lifetime commitment, isn't it? And that's why I feel like choice should be there always, regardless.
It should be, because if you're pro-life, but that child's or fetus is going to become a child and then put in an environment which isn't safe for them or isn't very fulfilling, then is that pro-life?
Yeah. And I think, I saw something online, it's an interesting comparison. The process of adopting is very difficult. It's very difficult to adopt a baby. You've got to pass the right checks. You've got to be financially stable, emotionally stable. You've got to have, you know, a good home to bring the child into. You have to have background checks and da-da-da-da. But there is no checklist for having a child. So I always thought, well, you should match the process of assessing someone for their ability to adopt a child as the same as somebody choosing to have one, right?
But that's another thing they're simplifying. You see, their counter argument is that, well, what we do is we bring this law back in, but then we put more money into adoption, as if like suddenly you've got loads of people signing up to adopt these children that aren't wanted.
These people on the streets aren't wanting to now adopt children. They're just trying to make a point. I struggle to see what the point is. But this whole narrative of you're murdering and things like that. And there's different gestational stages of conception. And we have the 3 trimesters. And in the UK, at least, the first trimester is lawful to terminate. The second trimester, it's more difficult, but it's medical grounds, you know, health problems with mum. And then third trimester is illegal in the UK. And that's because that baby or fetus could exist independent of mum. And that's where I guess the UK draws the line. But to say that, you know, none of that is taken into account, and that a fetus that cannot exist outside of a person, of a mother, or a female, now has more rights than the person carrying that fetus or that lump of cluster of cells is quite absurd. So yeah, we're talking about what you would hope is your most basic right, which is your own body and your own autonomy. And there is no comparison for men, you're right, because what would it be? There isn't. Yeah, so it is just absurd that the state or the law or the police can get involved in what you're choosing for yourself and your body. And unfortunately, making abortions illegal or no longer a constitutional right doesn't stop people from having abortions or needing abortions. So it just makes it dangerous and it makes it scary, and I dread to think what the consequences will be.
Well, I'm sure that was one of the reasons of bringing abortion in to provide somewhere safe and.
It's like Whoopi Goldberg said. She was all over the news today. That, like you say, this won't stop abortions. It just stops safe abortions, and that's the scary thing. Like, you're going to have young girls in America, in the states where it is made illegal, that are going to result to some quite desperate actions.
Life-threatening.
Yeah, they're jeopardising their own life.
Yeah,
exactly, jeopardising their own health. I actually watched a program the other day, and there was a girl on it who did that. She ordered some pills off the internet and did a sort of at-home abortion. Ended up in hospital, and it was what happened to her was quite very difficult and dangerous, and nearly killed. She nearly ended up dying.
Yeah,
and that was in this country. And the reason that she did that was because of fear of her parents finding out. So that you think about what the desperation that some women and young girls are going to feel over there.
Yeah.
So I think, from my perspective, they're definitely looking at it too simplistically.
Yeah, and I think as well, with how accessible everything is, Amazon, the internet, you can order anything online.
Literally,
and the dark web as well, you can get access to whatever you want at a moment's notice. So unfortunately, abortion pills are going to be out there, and they're not going to be approved by, what is it they have in America, the FDA, or I might be misquoting that, but they're not going to be approved.
They're not going to be regulated at all. Yeah.
And then these people are going to end up in hospital, and it's going to be very obvious what they've tried to do. And do they then get prosecuted? Do they get arrested? Do they get charged
it'd be
with
It's
attempted
an attempt,
murder?
isn't it?
Murder?
Yeah, that's interesting.
They managed that. Actually.
But why do you think these people that are so against it? Why do you think they care though? Because if it's not affecting them personally, it's just an option, right? That everyone's entitled to. Why do people care?
Why do they care so much? And we've all seen, the videos and in TV and whatnot, that people will stand outside abortion clinics and scream at people who are going in.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. But why do these people care?
Why do you care
Religion.
so much?
I think religion's a massive factor of it.
But I struggle to see any religious argument for it at all.
Well, because the way they see it is that you're taking a life.
Yeah, but
so they're seeing it as a sin.
That's how they see it, though. I'm not saying I agree,
so they're seeing it as a sin,
when
right?
I listened to one of the women answering questions on the news article I was watching earlier, that's what she said. She said it's just fundamentally wrong.
I mean, it's every religion's going to be different in the way that things are worded and written. But if it's a sin to take a life, why don't they impose better control of their guns? Why don't people, sing outside of the school shootings? They don't need to be stood outside abortion clinics when something isn't legally considered a baby yet, because it can't exist independent of a woman.
Well, there's contradictions everywhere, isn't there?
Yeah, so I can't understand why something has more rights when it doesn't actually exist yet and cannot exist independently than a person who is sort of stood before you existing and breathing and living. I don't understand the difference. And then you talk about floodgates, like, where does that end? How much further can that go in terms of contraception? Your choice not to have a baby, is that a small abortion every day when you're taking a pill? Is it,
That's a good point.
Is a condom a choice for, is that part of, murdering potential babies because they could have had life?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It just doesn't stop.
There's definitely people. I think there's probably people who view it that way. I think, you've kind of gone on to the next question a little bit, but I will go on to the next question. So, is this change in the law? Now, I've worded it as a product of toxic masculinity and control. Now, I definitely think it's a product of control, but I don't know about how do you feel about the element of toxic masculinity?
Well, law's not my field, so I couldn't say anything with any certainty. But from what I do know is law is still one of the things that is dominated by men, and a lot of things are dictated by men, and people in chambers are treated differently. I know a girl that works in chambers, and she's done things wrong, and been called out for it, and then her male counterpart's done exactly the same thing, and nothing's been said, right? So if that's happening in chambers, imagine what's happening higher up in the Supreme Court. So I think there's 100% potential for that, but I couldn't say with any clarity.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot wrong with the world, and there's a lot of we're all on a journey, and there's a lot. It's not finished. That equality isn't guaranteed. It's still a fight, isn't it? So if men and women aren't equal, women have been fighting for certain rights for however long, but they're not considered equal because they have the ability to because of their biology. It's a really strange thing. So yeah, toxic masculinity, I guess it goes back to your first point of why are men involved in making this decision, and is it a form of control? It's absolutely a form of control. There's no other interpretation of it, because if you're telling me I can't choose what happens to my body, then you're controlling me. And unfortunately that's coming from this the highest up, the courts. That means it's enforced by the police. That means a lot of people have control over my body and I don't. It's a strange thing to be punished for your biology, right? Or to be in less equal.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's I mean, it's difficult. I always look at situations like this where you've got like judges that are making such significant decisions that will impact people, that ultimately are so, that their lives, like those judges' lives, right, they're so far away from some of the women that this will affect. And I think that it's almost impossible for some of them to really empathize with some of the women, some of the scenarios we've suggested, where you say you've got a girl who's, I don't know, been abused, a young girl who's been abused and has become pregnant. I just think that some of these elderly judges, right, how can they really empathize with those situations? And for me, it's definitely about control, but I think that that's where there's some element of toxic masculinity in it. I just think making such significant decisions about women's rights, about women's bodies, about situations that they'll never be in. Like a man will never be in that situation. So I just
think there's an ignorance, though, isn't there? Like I know loads of guys that aren't even talking about this.
Yeah, that's one of the. And that's the main reason.
This is a huge significant moment, right, in history, and I know loads of guys just.
But that's because
don't know what you ask them. What's they're not interested at all, because like you said, it doesn't affect them because of the ignorance of like, we don't go through this, we don't experience this. So,
but interestingly, right. So before we started the podcast, Roni asked us, right, do any of us know what happens in an abortion? And there's 3 guys sat in the room. None of us knew. Now Roni then explained to us the actual process of an abortion, and I was like, you've just proved my point. Men they do not understand this.
Yeah.
Why are men making this decision? I know it's something that's happening in America, but that's why I wanted to do this episode. I haven't heard any men talking about it either, but I've seen so many women share it, and like people I follow in America sharing it, and I just think, if you see like something I view as an injustice, something happening, you should at least speak about it. Like, conversation's important, and the fact that you're showing, like the American followers I have, that I not that it matters significantly, but you're at least showing that you have to have the conversation them through that injustice, and like helping them, reinforcing their minds that you're not going crazy. What's happening is wrong.
Yeah, because America, I mean, like it's not like they're a third world country. We see them as very advanced, but they're setting liberties back and rights back this far. It's very shocking, and I think it happens all the time, and it's very obvious that the country's very divided. We saw that with the Trump Biden. We see it here with Brexit. You see it with lots of decisions that they're sort of, this 50-50 split comes, and people have very drastically different opinions. I always struggle to see the other side, because I always just think everybody else is wrong except for me. But
humble.
Yeah, keeping it
dumb
cool.
idiot.
But I can't understand why this particular topic is such a concern for so many people who it has nothing to do with. And the original Roe and Wade case, it was about the constitutional right to privacy and your family life. And it is a completely private matter what you decide to do with your body, right? And in any sense, if you decide to have cosmetic surgery, or you're going on the pill, or you're consuming alcohol, it's your decision because it's your body. But for some reason, this is the one thing that people who will have never met you care so much about. But they have no interest in what happens after that baby's born. You know, you're telling people that, you know, this is a life that deserves to be birthed. But the second that fetus comes into existence or is no longer unborn, no one cares if they're, you know, in a council home, fighting through the system, committing petty thefts and crimes, ending up in prison. Then it's somebody else's problem. But for as long as it's an unborn, it's their problem. It just doesn't make sense. Why do people have such a vested interest in something that they stop caring about when that being comes to life?
It is very bizarre. And you have, I think they said it was at 2/3. There was a poll. 2/3 of Americans are actually
would vote against it if it was put to the people.
Yeah.
Would vote against.
Oh, changing the law.
Yeah.
As in keeping.
Yeah, so keeping it as it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I guess this is the thing, and I keep coming back to it because I think it's important, is the way America's set up, in that they stick to a written constitution that's 260 odd years old. And if you read it word for word, it doesn't allow for all these liberal things that have happened, like gay marriage and taking contraception and you know, so many things. But how can a document written that long ago reflect where we are today? Like science, medicine, people have come so far, and it needs to adapt. The law needs to continue protecting people in a modern day rather than as it was back then. So, you know, I feel that America is stuck in this, and that's why, you know, gun rights are so all over the media, because you can't undo it. It's written in the Constitution, right? So they're always on an uphill battle with that one. But what the Supreme Court has done is said there is no constitutional right to abortion, so we're going to take it away and give it back to the 50 states to legislate and govern. And these states have elected representatives, so you would hope that that those representatives better represent the people who, you know, they're governing, so in their states. But it's still a very 50-50 split. So it's a very horribly complicated thing where sort of one court is ruling over 50 states. You cannot say that 50 states are represented well by one decision, because people will always argue. So they have said give it back to the people, but overnight half of America said abortions are illegal. They're not for you. I don't know if I'm getting to a point. I just think it's a very interesting, complicated legal system they have. And I just think it's a shame that there are this many people who truly believe that they have a vested interest in what's going on with somebody else's body, to the extent that they, you know, they protest and they feel the need to actively say what happens to you is my problem.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
But the irony is, I think a lot of these people will find, like, life, you can't predict life, right? So a lot of people are going to find themselves in a situation where actually they might need the abortion themselves, that want to change it back, right? And like, you look at Donald Trump, he's probably had to use that service himself, yet he had a big influence on what's going on now. So none of it's just the irony of it, like, it doesn't make sense.
No one wakes up and goes, when I'm older I want to get an abortion. It's nobody wants one.
Exactly.
Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, yeah, I think I'm gonna do this thing that's going to lead to this choice. Not at all. It's always going to be, you know, an emotional decision for a woman to do. But that's why you say, well, I trust you enough to make that decision privately, because it's you and your body and your circumstances, and you're the best judge of that. So, you know, you have the right. I think it's so basic. I think it's such a basic human thing.
I agree, yeah.
Justice Clarence Thomas.
Yeah.
So he is the one who called on his colleagues to put the Supreme Court same-sex marriage, gay sex, and even contraception cases on the table. Now, I was going to ask what your perspectives are on that, which I will. But how much program is it, and has he had to even want to bring these cases to the table?
I think he's led a very privileged life.
Exactly.
To not have any of those things affect him.
Exactly.
But he doesn't represent the majority of the population when he claims that contraception is something that shouldn't be a right, or gay marriage, or, you know, it's good for him that he grew up straight and that the law supported his choices. And good for him that he doesn't have to take contraception because he doesn't run the risk of becoming pregnant every time he has sex. But that doesn't represent everybody else. So it's a shame that those voices are so high, you know.
I think Ron's right. He's been brought up on this nuclear family idea.
Yeah.
He's been socialised into that from a young age. But he doesn't represent that because the real world isn't a nuclear family, is it?
And again, it's a complete simplification of what's actually going on. You know, abortion is not just, you know, somebody's been reckless with contraception or chosen not to have it and now they're just, you know, using their right to terminate. It's so many other things. It's so many social things as well. Look, in America, you have to pay for contraception. Not a lot of people can pay for that. You know, we're privileged here to have it on the NHS for free. People pay prescriptions, like $190 a month for the pill. If you can't afford that, that's not an option for you. You're relying
Cookie would
on...
be broke, man.
Yeah.
Grow up.
But it's just, there's so many additional things. It's medically as well. So many things are classed as abortions. If a fetus dies in the womb, it needs to be aborted medically. So that's an abortion. And if you leave a dead fetus inside of a woman, they will die. So there are so many things, ectopic pregnancies. You can have so many complications. It's almost like a countless list of things that can go wrong. If you look back a couple of hundreds of years, how many women died in childbirth? You know, it's a dangerous thing to do to your body. It's significant changes, the hormonal imbalances and everything. It's just something that's so risky, and you're forcing people to do it, you know, when they didn't choose it for themselves for whatever reason. I don't even think it matters. We always use we always say, oh, but think about that young girl that was raped. That's not even like the thing that we need to talk about. Anyone, for any reason, it just doesn't matter, should have a choice over what happens to their body because it's so significant.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, there's so many scenarios that could play out to why this has happened and why they need to use that service. But shouldn't there be some kind of medical professional who oversees this? Because like you said, you've reeled off.
There must be some form of that within...
Yeah, but what I'm saying, they must have it. We know they have it, but surely they should have the power to overrule if something that has happened, which has caused a pregnancy, which needs to be aborted, right? Surely that medical professional should have a power to overrule what they are saying.
Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
Do you get what I'm saying? Because if you're a medical professional, you've studied for a long time, you're going to know all the scenarios of what could happen here, all the scenarios that we know of, right? Which a judge or someone like that is not going to know, are they? So surely they should have kind of like the last input on it.
And I think another thing that you touched on there, Ronnie, which I have to say I've even been guilty of in this podcast, and I know I've seen so many people talk about on social media, that people jump to that point of, what about when someone's been raped or the baby's got medical problems? You know, what about those instances? And I know that a lot of American women have said, why should like, for example, why should our body need to be violated before, you know, before we protect it? Why we should just have that fundamental principle of protection. And I think that, you know, again, like I'm saying that, and that's because I'm a man. I'm trying to be, you know, I've tried to educate myself on this, like you say, even I've learned something today in terms of how the abortion, how it works in this country from you. So, do you know what I mean? I think it's important to just really like reflect on that. And I lost my trail of thought.
And just be open-minded, man, and try and look at things from other people's perspectives, even if it doesn't affect you directly. That's what we need to be.
I mean, it's literally 50% of the world's population that this, you know, it doesn't directly affect, but it makes you very nervous that if America did it, why wouldn't the UK do it? You know, why doesn't Europe do it? It's because they're first world, you know, they're very progressive, they're very forward thinking, but then things like this happen. On paper, sure.
Practically, no.
But it's pretty scary for people. I mean, it's I just truly think it's something that should be a right. And we have the right to bodily autonomy, but now females in America don't. It's not a constitutional right, so it's a scary thing, definitely.
I think that brings us nicely on to the final question. Should the rest of the world be worried somewhat about this?
I think so, yeah, ripple effect. And I think it's like you said, maybe it doesn't directly affect us now, but you should express your thoughts. You should share your opinions. You should fight for what you already are privileged enough to have, which is your right to those things, because those rights have been stripped from so many people. So taking it for granted is sort of not an option anymore. And I mean, abortion rights across the world are different country to country, and it's, Ireland only legalized abortion a few years ago, which was quite strange. So we always had,
I think it was 2018, wasn't it?
yeah, that's so recent. But their abortion laws are a lot more liberal than ours in the UK now. So it's just, the law is always playing catch up. It's always doing things a lot later than what you would hope they do. But unfortunately, America have taken what was their most progressive law, Roe and Wade, and they've just taken it back. It wasn't even just in place for 50 years, just shy of 50 years, and they've undone it. So it's just a very sad day for all those people, and I do think it should be felt around the world, and I think that people genuinely should worry. I would worry. If there was protests, I would be there. It's a right that you never realize how much you appreciate it until it's taken away. And that's our privilege, but that's what the reality is, that we need to continue fighting and educating perhaps men, but there's a lot of women as well that have these feelings in America.
Yeah, true.
Just continue educating how important it is, and don't oversimplify something so horrendously complicated. Trust a person to make the decision by weighing up their surroundings and what they could offer a child.
Yeah, that's been, what episode was that?
17.
Number 17. Let us know your thoughts on the change to the law in the comments, and give us a like, subscribe, and a follow. Would be hugely appreciated. Roni, I want to thank you massively for coming back on.
Thank you,
Thanks for
guys.
coming.
I love being here.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I know you're potentially thinking about starting your own podcast.
The Real Roni.
The Real Roni
This
is
is this is what you guys have come up with. I haven't come up with it. I still think you guys need a third.
I think we just love podcasts, and then you said about the Real Ronnie, and I like that idea.
Right. Let me host the next episode. I think that could be
all right,
interesting.
you come on and host an episode.
And I'll do some Q&As with you guys.
All right, that sounds good.
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay. Well, look forward to that,
Worming our way in.
So that's been TRP 17. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.